Hi guys, something can be said for somebody who is generally apathetic to politics, or even someone who has swung from voting Tory to Labour and then back to Tory, perhaps based on what they had hoped each of the parties would promise. However, there's something deeply wrong with this caller who claims to be a traditional Tory voter who, in a sense, wants everyone to treat politicians as the same. He lists off a number of problems facing Britain, which of course he excuses himself and his vote from, and presents a position as to why nobody should even vote. This sounds sinister, and I'll explain after you hear from him what I mean by that.
I will never vote in a general election again. I'm in that position where I can't vote for the Conservatives, which I would have done normally. I can't vote for Labour because I never have and wouldn't. And I watched the Tory conference, and yes, I was inspired by Rishi's speech and Suella's speech. Equally, I failed to disagree with what I hear from Angela Rayner and Lisa Nandy, for example. But I just have had enough disillusion. I don't see the point. I don't see the point, and I will never vote again, Andrew.
Do you feel overtaxed? What is it that's burdened you like this?
It's seen the state of the country. You know, I used to be a bobby years ago. All the police stations are shut, they're closed, the roads are crumbling, the town centre's boarded up. It's depressing. And as I say, I know we've had COVID, but if you take that out of the equation, I still think there's been massive underinvestment. The NHS, I've worked for the NHS. I wouldn't go back. That was my last job. I wouldn't go back because of the stress involved. It's a mess. It's a real mess, but I fail to see I can't see a solution in either party. I think that every single section of every single sector of every single public service is broken. There's nothing left to break.
So just before I let you go, Dave, I've got one here from... how pathetic. So we all stop voting. Very sensible. So not voting will change what?
Well, is it pathetic? Look at the turnout in Scotland. I will predict that we will have the lowest turnout in this next general election because people just can't be bothered anymore.
Now, when I said I think this is a bit sinister, I'll get to what I mean by that in a moment. But he said here that he's a traditional Tory voter. So we can go back to, if he's talking about traditional, then we're talking about a number of years. Let's say 2010. I don't know how old this guy is, but let's presume he's old. He was old enough to vote in 2010. So we can give him the benefit of the doubt, perhaps in 2010. You know, Blair had been in power for years. People were perhaps tired of that. They wanted change. So they voted for the Conservatives. But then he voted again for the Conservatives in 2015, after they started implementing austerity. Then he voted for them again in 2017, after the Brexit vote. I don't know whether this guy voted for Brexit or not. And then he voted for them again in 2019 because Boris Johnson made a load of promises, including getting Brexit done. And he's saying that the country is falling apart, and he's blaming the politicians. Yes, you can blame the politicians. They're the ones who are instrumental in whether the country succeeds or not. But you voted for them. You can't wash your hands of the situation. Now, when I said this is a bit sinister, what I mean by that is I'm almost... it sounds very strange, and maybe I'm being overly cynical here, but it sounds like he's a Tory party activist. Now, why would a Tory party activist talk about the country crumbling and low turnout and stuff like this? Because if there's low turnout, it helps the incumbent. So if people don't turn out, it's going to... not always... but it's generally going to help the party that's in power. Now, Scotland was didn't go that way. It didn't help the SNP, but that was a traditional Labour seat. So in a sense, it switched back to the incumbent. The Labour Party lost the seat in 2019 to the SNP. So they won it back. So in a sense, they won back a seat that they should have held in 2019. But a low turnout helps the Tories. So if this guy is telling people, what's the point in voting? I used to vote. I'm no longer voting. I listened to Rishi Sunak's... this was a bit of a red flag to me. I watched Rishi Sunak's speech. I haven't seen Rishi Sunak's speech. You know, I'm a political commentator. I follow these things, and I didn't watch Rishi Sunak's speech. Very few people actually watched Rishi Sunak's speech. This guy claimed he did. This was a bit of a red flag to me. I don't know actually anyone who watched it. So I believe this is perhaps a Tory party activist trying to convince people, look, the country is going to the dogs, it's falling apart. You can't try and convince people that everything is going great, because you wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. So it's an easier path to take. Say everything's gone to crap, and say what's the point in voting? And this will actually help the Conservative Party. Low turnout will help the Tories. But maybe I'm going down a bit of a rabbit hole. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.